Moving on to the running backs here. Notable running backs on the bye for Week 9. Denver's backfield of Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin. Detroit, a very notable one as David Montgomery tries to get healthy and Jahmyr Gibbs coming off 2 huge games. Jacksonville, Travis Etienne, he's been phenomenal this year. And, of course, for San Francisco, Christian McCaffrey. So, Jay, this is just
he's the cream of the crop.
This is a Bimageddon of running backs this week almost.
Absolutely. Christian McCaffrey, obviously the number 1 running back in fantasy. Travis Etienne quietly leading the league in carries.
A lot of people refer to Christian McCaffrey as the Todd Zeal of fantasy running backs.
That's fair.
Just kind of the best of the best, as it were.
That's
the kind of guy that you get towards.
Yes.
The kind of guy that wins
Takes
awards.
home the trophy.
Takes home the trophy.
Yes.
Exactly.
Absolutely. All right. A quick mention off the top here. Roschon Johnson of the Bears against the Saints. He's available in 50% of leagues. So kind of a toss-up if he's out there for you, but definitely somebody to keep an eye on. And then another mention here, because we have to. It's a staple of the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. If you haven't picked up Tyjae Spears by now, we don't know what else to tell you. So
what's wrong with you?
Why don't you just listen? Brings us to Tyjae Spears, who we've talked about on the show.
Other guys that we've been talking about stashing for a while, they're still out there in way too many leagues.
I don't understand this with Tyjae Spears. 76%
We're begging you. We've been begging you for weeks. Pick up Tyjae Spears. Why won't you listen to us?
We do this every week.
I was just going to say, what else can we say about Tyjae Spears? Why America's ignoring us? This is what I've learned. America's ignoring us because he's 58% available. I have begged America. I've gotten on my proverbial hands and knees and said, please, pick up Tyjae Spears. Why won't you listen to me? Why don't you love me? Why indeed?
We've been doing that so
What's
long.
not to love?
You see the seasonal wardrobe change. Like we were almost in like summer-esque clothing, and then now we're bundled up. That's how long.
Wearing an Atlanta Flames
Yes,
sweater at some point for NHL season.
And I wore that Buffalo Bills sweatshirt to commemorate the 1-year anniversary of Jay and I's one night in Buffalo.
One night in Buffalo. Historic
that
night.
Magical night.
Historic.
Tyjae Spears, available in 51% of leagues. So that number is starting to trickle downward. Yeah. You might have time. If you don't, well, you didn't listen.
Well,
All right.
Yeah, we'll find out, by the way. Trade deadline's coming up at 4 o'clock. It doesn't look like that Derrick Henry's going to be moved, but you never know. You never know. And again, he's still getting a decent amount of work. Even if Derrick Henry's still on that offense, the fact is that Tyjae Spears is getting a decent amount of work. Henry does have some injury concerns, and that offense suddenly looks rejuvenated under Will Levis.
Hell yeah.
So we will see. They have the Thursday night game against the Steelers this week.
All right, our next one here, Rams running backs, Darrell Henderson, 55% available, and Royce Freeman, who's looked good, 78% available. They have Green Bay and then the bye week. Week 8 against Dallas, when you look at this crew as well, 12 rushes, 31 yards, 3 catches for 54 yards for Henderson. I think something to keep an eye on, though, with this, guys, is that Matthew Stafford is day-to-day with a sprain in his right thumb, which would kind of make you a little afraid of the Rams' run game in terms of the lack of threat under center.
A little bit, although you could argue that they lean on and that the lack of efficiency is made up for with increased volume because they're going to want to run the ball. And by the way, that's exactly what they've been doing. These guys have touched the ball a lot in the last 2 games. 34 touches over the last 2 for Darrell Henderson. Freeman has 21 over the last 2. They've each scored a touchdown in these 2 weeks. Freeman got it last week. Henderson got it 2 weeks ago as well. And we're going to, at the end of this segment, we'll show you where I rank all these running backs. But just while we're here, I prefer still Henderson to Freeman. I get it. Freeman played a few more snaps than Henderson, 30-28 last week, and he got the touchdown. But I will say that Darrell Henderson also got a goal-to-go carry. He just was down at the 2. He got it from like the 5, and then they brought in Freeman. I don't know how indicative that is of something going forward. And by the way, Darrell Henderson involved in the passing game. He had 3 receptions for 54 yards, so that's why I prefer Henderson to Freeman. Is just the usage is about the same. I don't know that we have enough information to say this one is definitely the goal line back versus the other one. And so Henderson's passing game usage is what puts him over Freeman for me. It's worth noting they play the Packers this week, then they're on a bye, then they're home to Seattle, which is a tough run defense, and Kyren Williams could be back around that time as well. So this is a little bit of a short-term rental, but aren't we all?
Yep. And I think that going up against the Packers, that game is the Packers a field goal favorite, so expecting that to be close enough that there can be a run game script there. And also good news on Stafford that I was expecting yesterday maybe it'd be, a tear and he's going on IR and maybe that could still be in play, but it seems like there is some optimism that it won't be super long term, but we'll monitor that.
Our next one, Jay, Bills running back newly signed to the practice squad, Leonard Fournette. The Bills have the Bengals. It's no guarantee that Fournette will be called up and be active this week, but he is out there on the waiver wire pretty much across majority of leagues.
Yeah, huge range of outcomes possible
Correct.
with Leonard Fournette. There is a chance that he's just not a thing at all, and he just won't have any relevance for fantasy for the Bills, and he's just a depth option. There's also the chance that he's the number one running back on what could be the best offense in football the rest of the season. So those are your range of outcomes. I do think my best guess would be that he gets passing game work and he gets the goal line work that was going to Latavius Murray. I think he's been sitting on his couch for so long that I think that he would only sign for an opportunity that he knew that he was going to play. So I lean more towards the positive spectrum on Lenny, but certainly a huge range of outcomes.
It really depends on what your team needs. If you need a guy for this week, you're like, listen, I have McCaffrey and Etienne on a bye, which, by the way, if you do, good for you. But you know what I mean? Like, if you're sitting there like, hey, due to injuries and bye weeks, I need somebody this week, Fournette's not your guy. But if you're feeling pretty good about where you're at, I think Fournette, he comes in high for me because the range of outcomes can potentially be so high. Again, this is somebody who's been out there on the street for quite some time. And so why is that? Is that because teams haven't wanted to sign him? I mean, the Patriots kicked the tires on him. He's had a couple of visits. So is he out of shape? Or is it, to your point, Jay, that he's just like, you know what? I want to wait at this stage of my career. I won a Super Bowl with the Bucs. I'd like another shot at another title. Let me just wait till the right situation, team, role, et cetera, et cetera. And so here comes the Bills that have Damian Harris hurt and Latavius Murray. I tweeted this out. Ian Hartitz put this out. He does the Sheesh report every week, which is about missed opportunities. And Latavius Murray has had 4 goal-to-go carries where he has not scored, not only on not those carries, but also on that drive. So it's not like he got one, went down, and then he was able to convert it again. So I wonder if Fournette, who's a better pass catcher than Latavius Murray, to your point, Jay, I agree with your analysis, which is that he could get the Latavius Murray role plus some of the passing down work that they have James Cook in. So for whatever reason, they haven't fully committed to Cook, and maybe Fournette, who does have this championship pedigree, who is very good in pass pro, who is can play all 3 downs. To your point, there's a chance, and maybe it's a 10% chance, but there is a chance at some point this season he's the lead running back on one of, if not the best offense in football. And so for me, that upside is worth grabbing and stashing right now. Just understand that he also might be never called up and you might be dropping him in 3 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, with the difficulty of the Bills' schedule that I mentioned, I think he's just going to be in the guy in a lot of 2-minute drills where this offense is just constantly trying to score. Certainly think that he could provide a lot of value.
And especially, Jay, back to your point that if they're in shootouts, I mean, he could be the one benefiting from a lot of that in goal line situations. Our next one here, Cardinals running back Emari Demercado against the tough Browns defense. He's available in 64% of leagues against Baltimore. Demercado got 20 carries for 78 yards. He also caught 1 pass for 1 yard. Kind of a weird thing to sprinkle in here, guys, is that Clayton Tune is expected to start for the Cardinals this week.
What do you think he's going to be like first up against the Browns defense?
I think very safe. A lot of quick game. Tune's a guy that threw the ball a ton in college, so this isn't going to be something that he's not used to. But you can't have him taking deep drops against this Browns pass rush. You're setting him up for disaster. But the good news is that probably benefits some guys on the Cardinals offense.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he was part of a Clayton Tune, right? He played at Houston with Tank Dell. He was Tank Dell's guy.
Tank had 180 targets.
I mean, 1,000%. And honestly, when I was at the NFLPA Rookie Premiere, I spoke to both Clayton Tune and Tank Dell about each other, and both could not have been more effusive about the connection they had and just what kind of a competitor. Tank Dell talking to me about what kind of a competitor Clayton Tune is. And so we'll see. They were going to try to ramp up Kyler Murray, but the reports are, and it was weird because after the game, Jonathan Gannon said, hey, no, we're sticking with Josh Dobbs. And then a little bit later, it came out Monday morning. It was just actually, it's either going to be Clayton Tune or Kyler Murray. And so does Josh Dobbs get dealt?
I think you're onto something.
You know what I mean? Again, because if they probably can't find a trade partner for Kyler Murray at the moment, right? With his contract, they probably people want to see him play. The Cardinals are very much in the conversation to have a shot at Caleb Williams or Drake May, right? And so there's a lot of,
right.
and the guys that drafted Kyler Murray aren't there. He was a Kingsbury guy. And so could they be like, maybe there's a purpose in starting Clayton Tune
and not rushing
Kyler Murray, and so we'll see. Opportunity here for the guy. The other thing that's important to note here is, so they play Cleveland, then they're home to Atlanta, which in theory is still a good defense. I know last week was tough, but it's still a good defense, although they lost Grady Jarrett. At Houston, that's not an easy matchup. And then they're home to the Rams. So it's not a great schedule coming up here. Really interesting to see what happens with Clayton Tune. We'll talk more about what you're going to do with the Marquise Browns and the Trey McBrides of the world as we get later into the week. But yeah, that's a really interesting one, because Josh Dobbs has value, and why wouldn't you trade him for a 3 or something like that?
He'd be the best quarterback on the Vikings or the Jets
100%.
right now.
And it's also just right by the player too, right?
Yes.
Josh Dobbs is not a part of the Cardinals' long-term future. He's not. They drafted Clayton Tune to be a long-term backup for them, and whether Kyler or a top 3 pick is their future, that means Josh Dobbs is irrelevant to this franchise.
And he's played well.
He
played great, but he has shown that he should be if not a starting quarterback, he should be a top backup in this
100%.
league. I don't know that he's a starting quarterback necessarily in this league, but you know what I mean? There are people much worse with him with jobs in the NFL.
Yep.
So
I would love to see him on the Vikings offense with Justin Jefferson back in a couple of weeks and Jordan Addison. I think he could definitely lead them to the playoffs.
I can't be fully objective. He is literally one of my favorite players in the NFL. Like I said, I go to the NFLPA rookie premiere every single year. I've done it for 7 years. I interview 40 to 45 kids every single year. And over 7 years, there's 5 or 6 guys that I remember that interview with. I just loved that guy, and Josh Dobbs is one of those guys who I just absolutely love. So I'm rooting for Josh Dobbs here. As for Amari DiMercato, Luigi, he like Amari. Amari, he's my guy. Here's the issue. Here's the issue. Here's the issue. Right there, he play at Cleveland this week. Okay. And then the week after that, the James O'Connor kind coming back. I'm a little nervous about my Amari. Okay. Luigi, you're nervous about Amari. Wouldn't go crazy for Amari.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. All right.
The weird thing here, just normal voice for a second. The weird thing about Amari DiMercato is, so he's been getting the touches, right? 39 over the past 2 weeks, getting a ton of work. But then also, Keontae Ingram ran twice as many routes. We thought DiMercato was the third down back. Well, last week, he saw 4 of the 6 snaps inside, and this is Keontae Ingram, 4 of the 6 snaps inside the 10-yard line. He ran twice as many routes. They were using DiMercato as the every down back, and then Keontae Ingram as the third. And now with Clayton Tune, and who knows? Sure, if you're truly desperate, and Cleveland hasn't been Cleveland recently. The last 2 weeks, the defense hasn't looked as dominant as we've seen, but I don't know.
I mean, just any running back who gets 20 carries in a game generally just has to be rostered
value,
until they lose that job. And also the fact that he was able to get 20 carries in a game that they were effectively losing the entire time, I think that bodes well as well. But yeah, not super inspiring, and it'll be James Conner's role when he's back.
Our next running back, Devin Singletary from the Texans, who, Jay, he officially finds himself in a split backfield with Dameon Pierce. It's been trending this way. They are officially splitting touches.
It has been trending that way, and look, I don't think you're super excited about either of these guys. I think the main upshot of Singletary getting more work is that it's just bad news for Dameon Pierce as opposed to good news for anyone who has Devin Singletary, because I just think that is going to be a divide, and I mean, I'm not very excited about starting Singletary in my flex, Matthew.
Nor should you be. We actually saw Mike Boone get some work, right? I mean, so it's now it's a 3-headed committee on an offense that hasn't been, even when they've been rolling, even when the Texans' offenses look good, they haven't been able to run the ball effectively. And we thought at the beginning of the year, well, it's because their offensive line was banged up. Maybe it's just not a good run game. And maybe just, C.J. Stroud is good enough, and their wide receivers are winning one-on-one matchups. And so, but, I mean, look, he had, he just didn't do a ton here. He saw they had 7 snaps inside the 10-yard line. Singletary got only 2 of them. It's not a great matchup with the Buccaneers this week. They allow the 7th fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs. And, so we're mentioning him because he's out there, but more to say hey, I'm not super excited about this. By the way, I'm so effing pissed at this run game in general. because Dameon Pierce, I'm in a guillotine league. Oh no, I'm not. I'm a cut. I'm a dead. Luigi is a dead. Not in our guillotine league, but the one that I care about, the guillotine league that I care about,
Thanks,
it's with a bunch of celebrities and VIPs and people that are investors in FantasyLife.com. And so I'm still alive in our league, and I'm still alive in a league. I'm in a guillotine league with a bunch of my old ESPN buddies. I'm killing them. That's fine. That's easy. But the league that I care about.
With the big people.
With the big people, right. You guys, the little people. The one with the big people, I just got cut last night. And all I needed was Dameon Pierce he scores a touchdown, and then it gets called back. And then they have another 1 yard carry, and they give it to C.J. Stroud. So Andrew Beck, their fullback, gets the second carry when Pierce gets in, and then they call it, overturn it. And then they come in close, and then they give it to C.J. Stroud as opposed to Dameon Pierce. If he gets one of those touchdowns, I survive. If Josh Jacobs doesn't score last night, because the guy it was between me and one other guy, and the touchdown that Josh Jacobs put him over the top. If he doesn't get that touchdown, I survive. But of course, the Lions' vaunted run defense can't stop stupid Josh Jacobs from getting in the end zone. So I'm a bitter Luigi. I'm a sad. I ate my feelings.
Our last running back, Zach Charbonnet, he's got Baltimore this week. 58% available, and Charbonnet coming off a week where he outsnapped Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker was banged up coming into this game. So Charbonnet, definitely a guy that you can pick up, and if Walker remains banged up, he's going to be involved.
He's averaging 5.8 yards per carry so far this season. Pete Carroll talked him up quite a bit on the in a press conference recently. Now again, Pete Carroll talks everyone up, but the fact is this is a really talented kid that came out of college that we really liked, and that had he landed in a different situation, we'd have been over more. And so Pete Carroll's not scared to say hey, you're the guy now. And so again, his role this week would be uncertain at Baltimore, and you don't love the matchup. But if you're in the Leonard Fournette, hey, I'm just grabbing someone to stash because I think he's got massive upside compared to a lot of these. Like, if I'm grabbing and stashing, I much prefer him to the Singletaries, DeMarcados, even the Rams guys, right? Because I think Kyron Williams comes back. Let's look right now at the Luigi's rankings. Yeah, let's look at how I put them up in the order here.
The Week 9 top running back waiver targets: Roschon Johnson, Tyjae Spears, Darrell Henderson, Leonard Fournette, Emari DeMarcado, Royce Freeman, Motor Singletary, and finally, Zach Charbonnet if you need to stash. With that,
Zach Charbonnet is, if you need somebody this week,
okay.
Zach Charbonnet's there at 8. But if you needed someone to stash, I'd put him right up there with Leonard Fournette. Okay. I'd actually put him ahead, right there tied with Fournette, because they both have massive upside. I might even put him ahead of Fournette, actually, because he's currently on the roster, and, we know he can play.
And we've seen Kenneth Walker get banged up through 1,000% season already.
1,000%. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.